For those of you that are new, welcome to the channel, a good place to find a truthful, non-biased source of political and military analysis. How do you topple a global superpower when you've got no army, no navy, and no air force? It sounds like something out of a film, doesn't it? A fantasy. But what if I told you it's not a fantasy at all? That throughout history, small, secret armies have done just that, changing the world from the shadows. They've made empires bleed and brought superpowers to heal, often with little more than a bit of cunning, conviction, and the element of surprise. So how is it done? How can a thrown-together bunch of fighters win a seemingly impossible war? That's the question we're tackling today as we look at the dark art of unconventional warfare. When you think of war, you're probably picturing massive armies clashing on a battlefield. That's conventional warfare. Unconventional warfare is the polar opposite. It's not fought between armies, but in the spaces between them. It covers everything from guerrilla warfare and sabotage to subversion and psychological operations. The main goal isn't to smash the enemy's army to bits, but to grind down their ability and their will to even carry on fighting. It's death by 1,000 cuts, designed to make a war so expensive, so exhausting, and so demoralizing that the stronger power just gives up and goes home. This isn't about winning battles in the old-fashioned sense. It's about outlasting your opponent, turning their strengths into weaknesses, and fighting on the one battlefield that truly matters, the human mind. The core principle is asymmetry. You don't fight fair because you know you can't win that way. You avoid their army. Instead, you hit their supply lines, their infrastructure, their morale, and their political standing. The playbook for this kind of fighting is ancient, but it was really sharpened during the Age of Revolutions. Take the American Revolutionary War. While the main Continental Army was getting battered by the British Empire, blokes like Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, took the fight to the swamps of South Carolina. Marion didn't have a grand army. He had small, mobile bands of local militia who knew the lay of the land like the back of their hand. They'd hit British patrols and supply columns with lightning-fast ambushes, then just vanish back into the wilderness before the British could do a thing. The British commander, Banastra Tarleton, got so wound up by Marion's tactics that he famously said, "As for this damned old fox, the devil himself could not catch him." Marion and his men never beat the British army in one big battle. They bled them, frustrated them, and tied down thousands of troops that were needed somewhere else. They showed that the land itself can be your greatest weapon. This new way of fighting, by irregulars, soon got a proper name. During the Peninsular War in the early 1800s, Spanish and Portuguese fighters rose up against Napoleon's occupying forces. The Spanish called it La Pequeña Guerra, or the Little War. In English, that became guerrilla warfare, and the name has stuck ever since. If you like videos like this one, please consider sharing a like, as I put a lot of time into the research for these, and I would really appreciate it. Thanks. As warfare moved on, the battlefield shifted from swamps and mountains into the modern city. And you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who mastered this new battleground better than Michael Collins during the Irish War of Independence. Collins knew that to fight the British Empire, which had its intelligence hub in Dublin Castle, he couldn't just rely on countryside ambushes. He had to take the war straight to the enemy's front door. Collins pioneered urban guerrilla tactics. He set up the IRA into small, secret units called flying columns or squads. These lads would carry out swift, targeted attacks, often assassinating key British intelligence officers and their informants, and then just fade back into the city crowds. Their most important weapon was information. Collins built a massive network of spies that got right into the heart of the British administration, letting him strike with surgical precision. The psychological pressure was immense. No British official could feel safe. The enemy was everywhere at once and nowhere to be seen. By provoking harsh British crackdowns, Collins also turned the Irish population against them, proving another key rule of this kind of war. If you get the people on your side, you become almost impossible to beat. Come World War II, unconventional warfare was scaled up and properly organized like never before. With most of Europe under Nazi occupation, the Allies couldn't just rely on conventional armies, they had to fight from the inside. And that's where two of history's most famous secret outfits come in: the British Special Operations Executive, SOE, and the American Office of Strategic Services, OSS. The SOE's mission, handed down by Winston Churchill himself, was brutally simple: set Europe ablaze. Both the SOE and the OSS trained agents, men and women, and sent them deep behind enemy lines. Their job wasn't to fight the German army head-on, it was to be organizers, trainers, and saboteurs. They connected with local resistance groups, from the French Maquis to the Yugoslav partisans, basically creating secret armies all over the continent. A classic example of their work was Operation Jedburgh. Small, three-man teams, usually a British or American officer, a French officer, and a radio operator, were parachuted into occupied France just before the D-Day invasion. They coordinated resistance attacks, blowing up railway lines, ambushing German reinforcements, and cutting communications. The idea was to paralyze the enemy, to stop them from being able to react properly to the Allied landings. General Eisenhower himself later said that these resistance forces, organized by the OSS and SOE, played a massive part in the final victory. They proved that a few well-placed saboteurs could do what entire bombing campaigns sometimes couldn't. Nowhere were the limits of conventional power more starkly exposed than in the jungles of Vietnam. The United States went into that war with all the technology and money in the world. But the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese army simply refused to play by American rules. They were masters of their environment. They used a massive network of underground tunnels to hide entire bases, hospitals, and workshops right under the Americans' feet. They used hit-and-run ambushes and complex booby traps, often made from unexploded American bombs. Their soldiers didn't wear uniforms, letting them blend in with local farmers, which made it impossible to tell friend from foe. But their strategy wasn't just about ambushes, it was deeply psychological. The Viet Cong worked to win the hearts and minds of the peasants, portraying themselves as liberators fighting a foreign invader. At the same time, they waged a brutal campaign of terror and assassination against civilian administrators, teachers, and anyone who sided with the South Vietnamese government, proving that controlling the population was as much about fear as it was about support. This relentless physical and psychological pressure was designed to break morale on two fronts, on the battlefield and back on the American home front. The goal was to make the war so long, so bloody, and so pointless that America's political will would just crumble. And in the end, it worked. What are your thoughts on the shakeup of global stability that we are seeing? Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Today, the principles of unconventional war are the same, but the tools are completely different. The new battlegrounds are digital. The conflict in Ukraine shows this perfectly. It's being fought not just with tanks, but with cyber attacks, social media disinformation, and cheap but deadly drones that have changed the game. Ukrainian special forces and resistance cells behind enemy lines are hitting critical Russian infrastructure, just like the OSS did decades ago. But at the same time, the psychological war is being fought online. Ukraine's I Want to Live project uses social media and messaging apps to get inside the heads of Russian soldiers, encouraging them to surrender. It's a modern digital version of propaganda, designed to sow doubt and crush the will to fight. This mix of old and new, classic guerrilla tactics combined with cyber warfare, is what defines the modern shadow war. Nations can now back proxy forces and influence conflicts from thousands of miles away, getting what they want without a direct head-to-head fight. From the swamps of South Carolina, to the jungles of Vietnam, and now to the digital frontiers of the 21st century. The story of unconventional warfare is the story of the underdog. It shows that sheer power can be beaten by strategy, patience, and a proper understanding of human psychology. 3 rules seem to hold true. First, asymmetry. Never fight your enemy on their terms. Hit their weak spots and stay away from their strengths. Second, psychology. The real battlefield is the mind. Breaking an enemy's will is better than breaking his army. And third, legitimacy. The support of the people is the water the guerrilla swims in. Without it, you're finished. These secret armies, fighting from the shadows, have shown time and again that even impossible wars can be won. which leaves us with a final thought. As technology keeps blurring the lines between peace and war, are we all slowly becoming soldiers on a new, unconventional battlefield? If you found that journey into the shadows of military history interesting, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and let us know in the comments which case of unconventional warfare you think is the most compelling. And ring that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Cheers for watching.